Um, Welcome to today's episode of the Biz Podcast. Today, we're going to be talking about burnout and how it impacts, or the fear of it, or how it can end up really making your life and your working life feel not great. And I am pleased to have Carleen Hicks join me today. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about who she is. And then we're going to jump into a really juicy conversation around how we can make our working life one we enjoy. So Carleen Hicks is a successful executive and leadership coach who quickly builds rapport with her clients, allowing them to explore areas of strength and vulnerability in their working life. Her approach has helped hundreds of professionals, leaders, and emerging leaders and executives to get what they want at work. Best of all, her approach is based on proven behavioral science that has helped millions of professionals empower their dream careers. She brings over 20 years of experience working with businesses and leadership teams in the private and not-for-profit sector, and she holds a bachelor's degree from the University of Manitoba and is a certified integral master coach. Carleen, I'm very excited to have you here and to talk about this topic. This is something that you and I have gotten to talk about a bunch of different times, and how we see people approaching work and career and success, and how, unfortunately, some of the ways that we think about all of those things set us up to be on the edge of the precipice of burnout, like all the time.
Yes, thank you so much, Laura, for having me. And yes, we're seeing this more and more. It's becoming very much in the public realm because we're talking about well-being a lot more, which is fantastic. This is such an amazing step forward. But we also are kind of fighting against the stream here a little bit because we're seeing in a modern workplace, in a modern professional life, that a lot of people still have a culture of busy, and we glamorize that culture of busy. Right? We like to say, oh, I'm so busy at work. And, I've worked 60 or 70 hours last week. And we're saying it kind of to complain, but it's also sometimes a bit of a credential that we're putting out there in terms of, hey, look at me. I must be important. I had to work that many hours. And this is role modeled for us. And it's been role modeled for us for years. But it has created this perception that in order to be successful, we at some point need to either get burnt out, be burnt out, or have aspects of burnout affecting us. And that's a really dangerous mindset to be enshrined culturally in our working lives.
It's the hustle harder thing, right? Which I am super anti hustle harder, but you see it everywhere. You see it everywhere in how people talk about getting to success. Well, you just have to do the work. You have to like people talk about the hustle as the good thing. Like, well, what's today's hustle, right? And it's always about the more, the harder, the intensity. And it's become, it's become the rule, in my opinion, right? The rule that people start to believe is you have to work really, 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 really hard and be really, really busy and be willing to sacrifice if you want to have done well.
Absolutely. And again, it's role modeled around us. We see it around us all the time. We hear about it. Certainly, in workplaces, we hear colleagues talking about how many hours they've worked or how busy they are, or how important the work is that they're on, or that they have a demanding client. And, part of you is thinking, oh my goodness, am I that important? Can I be that important? Is this what I should be doing? Is this how success looks? Is this what, me being important to my organization or to my business looks like? And what's interesting is you don't hear a lot of narratives around, oh no, I am so happy. I am not the person who's doing that. I am very happy with my 40-hour work week. Thank you very much. I get to tuck my kids in at night. I get to have relaxed time. I get to make my yoga dates. Rarely do we hear people talking about those types of activities at work because they're leisure activities. And that just doesn't quite fit in this more masculine narrative of hard work is what's going to make this happen.
And I used to call myself lazy all the time because I didn't want to work all the time, right? Because I would take downtime when I wanted to do things like just watch a whole bunch of Netflix. I want to go watch the entire season of Mrs. Maisel this weekend. And I would justify it and being like, oh, I just like to be lazy, right? But what if it's not that? It's not lazy to want to take time for yourself and to do things that you enjoy that are not work.
Absolutely. And I think it's important too that we're bringing in these pieces at work and we are helping to celebrate the fact that people have time to binge watch Netflix, because let's face it, we're all doing it, or Prime or whatever your source is, to take time to celebrate with our families. But more and more, it's become sort of taboo to even talk about the fact that you have downtime, to even say that. And the other part of it is too, is we're not, with this culture of busy, we're not allowing ourselves to be able to speak about our real lives, right? Work life is one aspect of what it is that we're doing, that we're filling our time. And yes, it takes a lot of hours a week when you've got a full-time career on the go. But that doesn't mean that you can't talk about what's happening at home. And one of the places I see this being done the most bravely is sometimes on LinkedIn. I will see people putting things out on LinkedIn about what's happening from a health perspective, or about what's happening with respect to challenges when you have, kids who are on the spectrum. And that's coming into this LinkedIn forum, which is typically this very business forum. It's been interesting to look at the comments. Like 90% of them are super happy to have somebody having this conversation, bringing this topic up, giving it time and import. And about 10% are like, why are you posting this on LinkedIn? This is where we do professional networking. It's right. It's we need to make more space in working life to be able to showcase the fact that we are a whole person, so that all of us can be welcome at work in a professional way, of course, right? We're not going to be treating work like it's a family gathering, but we definitely want everyone to feel like they can be themselves. And a big part of who you are is your family and your personal life. And so bringing some of that to work, not all of it, but some of it to work, and having it be welcome there can be a really good combatant, or can break that rule about it has to be about hard work, has to be about busy. No, I can talk about the fact that I watched the entire series of Game of Thrones over a long weekend.
Yeah. And that's just like you were talking about how we don't have, like, we have so many people modeling that hustle harder, work, work, work model. We appreciate that there are some people who are now modeling something different, and that that's starting to come out, but that we need to talk about it. Like conversations like this, we need to talk about what that looks like, and not know that the answer, right? Because I'm sure you must see this. I feel like the answer when people are starting to get really, really tired and exhausted is, I just need to push harder.
And it's also one of the things that our workplaces set us up for, because we've been over the last 30 years, we've seen organizations really pushing hard for organizational health, right? So what does that mean? Profitability, really good share returns if you're a publicly traded company. So there's been this huge financial focus on the performance of organizations, and somewhere in that financial focus, employees shifted from being what drives your company forward, the incredibly amazing resource that makes your clients happy or makes your business even viable, to a cost center on a profit and loss sheet. And as part of that, we're constantly seeing, at least it was my experience when I was working in corporate HR, constantly seeing okay, well, can we trim 5%? Can we trim 10%? The work didn't go away, it got redistributed. So we've been asking people to do more and more with less and less. And it has really impacted, first of all, the connection people have with their work, because they don't necessarily always feel that great about it. Yes, you're getting lots of stuff done. Yes, you're working many hours. But if you ask most professionals what they feel proud about in their careers, it would take them a moment to think about it, because while they got a lot done, how they feel about what they got done has shifted, because it isn't necessarily their best work. It isn't necessarily quality work. They got it done. That was the goal. And it's keeping in mind how this is impacting workplaces, how this is impacting working lives, and understanding that, the hours of work that we're being asked to perform through isn't necessarily going to uphold the high performance of companies. We know this, we've seen this. And also too can really, of course, impact those working lives. And we're seeing it, I think, accumulate right now in the Great Resignation, where people are saying, you know what? I don't have to try and squeeze 80 hours of work into 40 hours so I can have my family life, or I can make sure I can look after my well-being. But this is very hidden. So what leaders in particular are being asked to do is to push their teams. And a lot of leaders are amazing people, and they're not going to do that. So what they're going to do is they're going to take it. They're going to take it. Their 40 hours balloon to 50 hours, or 50 hours balloon to 60 hours. Even their teams now faced with doing a lot more. And it just keeps swelling, and people just try very hard to work with it, but they're also trying hard, especially leaders, not impacting others. And this is this hidden cost that happens. It's hiding in plain sight. When we don't feel like we have an option to not deliver the work, we're going to push through, no matter how that's impacting our well-being, whatever that well-being piece is for you. Sometimes it can be mental, sometimes it's physical, sometimes it's relational when we're talking about relationships outside of work.
So what do you want people to know about that? What do you do when it's like, so it's certainly in corporate settings, it's a different thing with small business owners, but it impacts us all in the same kind of way, where we think like, well, it has to be done. What do you want me to do? It has to happen. Like, what do you want people to know about all of that?
Well, and it goes deeper into hiding, you talk about small business and entrepreneurs and business owners, right? It is so hard to put the work down because work is at home. And we're seeing this across the board, coming out of the pandemic, and now with hybrid workplaces, work and home have been closer together than they've ever been before. So it's pretty easy when you have that big fat idea, or you want to double check those numbers, or you want to send that email, just to jump onto your computer and to do all that, even though it's 8:30 at night. And you're telling yourself, oh, well, good person, got it done, right? Oof, making sure, but what did it cost you? And so part of what I'd love for people to consider is, what kind of rules have you created in your mind based on what's been role modeled for you, and what you're seeing with other people? This culture of busy, this culture of hustle, stop just for a moment and ask yourself, okay, but what does it cost me? And how ethical is it?
Yeah. Yeah. And not just always accepting what is given to you, right? Like, there is a certain amount that you can have some control over. And sometimes we forget that we can change how things are done.
We can, and sometimes as well, there's a lot of trying to stand out and continuing to make sure people are connected to your work. So maybe you're not connected to your work, but you do want it to make a difference, right? You missed the first half of your kid's third birthday party because you were working on a proposal. That needs to mean something. So that proposal better really rock. So we put a lot of pressure on ourselves, and it's really, asking yourself, okay, hang on a minute. Is this cost going to be something that fulfills me? Because if I'm sacrificing things, but it's also still not connecting to me in any meaningful way, then it makes it very difficult. And if you're doing it for other people, if you're doing it to stand out to your boss, if you're doing this to stand out, in a marketplace because you're an entrepreneur, if you're doing this from a place of fear, that's where this really gets dangerous. Because when we move from a place of thinking we're flawed or we're not enough, then we will put a lot of time and energy into trying to fix. And that is a losing game for most people, because there's nothing you need to fix. You are not broken. The system is broken. The rules we sold ourselves are broken. And some of this comes from the beginning of our careers, right? You get out of, the education system, whatever the education system was for you, and you're trying to make it. Maybe you're also trying to pay some student loans or get out of your parents' house or buy a car. And so you take a lot of work and you do a lot of things to prove yourself in that workplace. But at some point, you also then build your own life. And sometimes the hustle really kicks in because you want a mortgage and you still have student loans. So there's all this pressure, and then you start a family. And it's important for us to really step back in the careers that we've chosen and to say, is this still something I'm choosing? Is this still something that I enjoy? And if it isn't, it doesn't mean you have to stop. What it means is you have to rethink, what would enjoyment look like for me in this profession, in this career, in this business?
Yeah, that happens in all of the areas of people I talk to, right? Where suddenly you started with one intention and it took over and you haven't stopped again to say, am I doing what I want to be doing? Is this what I like? And that, the great resignation is happening because there are a whole bunch of people who are like, no, and I'm not doing it anymore. And some things need to change on bigger scales. All like, this is, my dream for the world, right? Is that we stop glamorizing hustle harder, that we all think, what, even 40 hours a week, maybe that's a lot, right? Unless you love it, not like 40 hours is a lot of hours on its own, let alone going up to 50, 60, 70. And I know a lot of people do that, but like, and even still, with years of practice of saying this, it feels a little indulgent that I say, I don't work 40 hours a week, and I do not want to. That I have built a life that way for myself. That doesn't mean I have to sacrifice success. It doesn't mean that I have to sacrifice income in this massive way, but I know that I do better work when I don't work that many hours, that when I come in, I work, I do well, I am good at my job, but I do not need to do 40 hours of work to be deserving of success. And that's not a thing a lot of people talk about. It's the kind of thing people come back to you with, oh, it must be nice. And you're like, it is, it's really nice, right? But it is a change in how we think about what work is supposed to be. And it's like the kind of thing that I hope can be like into corporate, into everywhere, like stop glamorizing hustle and start helping people not burn out. The amount of people that we all know who have had to go on stress leave because they have burnt out, like how many people do we all know who either did take stress leave or they actually probably should be?
Absolutely. I mean, there have been studies that have been coming out since the 50s out of Berkeley and Stanford that have been talking about what is the optimized level of work. How many hours a week is the optimized level of work that people can actually be productive in? And the number has consistently come back at 30 hours a week. Now, that's 30 hours in total, folks. That's not 30 hours of work you're getting paid to do, right? This is also about the work we do to keep our houses running, right? To make sure the kids are sorted out, to get meals on the table, to do the grocery shopping. This is all labor as well. And that doesn't always get taken into account either. And it's been really interesting, and it's still in its infancy, but there's a lot of organizations that are toying with this 4-day work week as opposed to a 5-day work week. And seeing that it hasn't initially, at least for those that have gone into it, and there's been lots of examples coming out of Europe, particularly through Sweden, Denmark, France is another one that's been trying it, that the productivity for those companies hasn't dipped. And so it's reinforcing this idea that humans really are only going to be highly productive for a certain period during the day. And that hard work myth really, doesn't take that into account. It doesn't say, hang on a moment. Yes, I'm writing this proposal at 9:30 at night because that's when my kids are asleep. And I look at me, I'm rocking it, I'm making it all happen. Yes, you absolutely are. But what's interesting is if you had written that and said the next morning when you were sitting at your desk during work time, would it have been a better proposal? Would it have been different? How about what if your experience in writing that proposal was just a whole lot more positive? But again, this is not something we feel. We actually have the agency to demand for ourselves in a really busy working life. We are seeing this as I don't have a choice. I have to keep up with my peers. I have to make money. I have to make sure that I'm putting stuff out there. And it's saying, again, because it's role model for us, yes, that's the way you need to do this. But burnout has a cliff associated with it. We can push ourselves through those boundaries where we are seeing huge exhaustion. I mean, exhaustion beyond just being tired, exhaustion where you are having difficulty with making sure you have enough sleep. It's interrupting your sleep. You are fatigued, even to do exciting things, right? Even to have, a long weekend and know that you actually have the 3 days off. It can be tough when you're hitting exhaustion to muster the excitement or the energy because you just don't have it. Why? Because you've been burning the candle at both ends. You've been working super hard. It can affect our families because we're having emotion reactions. And we're not going to do that at work because work's conditional, right? People are only going to keep paying us if we're nice, stable, sober people, not, yelling and screaming and or looking sad or crying. And so, these are these huge pieces that everybody wants to avoid at work. And it takes a lot of energy when you have overextended yourself to manage those pieces. And, what instead we should be looking at is, what would it look like if I was working a nominal number of hours, 30 hours a week, or even 40 hours a week, if that's where you're at? What would that look like? What benefits would there be for myself? How could this then make the hours I am at work more productive? Because there is a diminishing return, right? Yeah, you did that proposal at 9:30 at night, got it out the door, fabulous. But what have you got left in the tank for the next day? There is a cost. We've got a finite amount of focus, energy, productivity in us each week. And we do have to curate that strategically to look after ourselves and have that connection, right? Enjoy it, be able to really enjoy the fruits of our labor. I know so many people, particularly over the pandemic, who, because they weren't going on vacation, chose to put a pool in their backyards, which is fabulous. But when you're working 60 hours a week, you're not getting in that pool and enjoying yourself. And that's just absolutely sad, right? Why are we working 60-hour a week if you cannot actually enjoy what it is that you've got?
We don't even notice, I think, some of the things that are taking our attention in different ways. We don't acknowledge them. I did an interview for somebody for a research study recently, and she asked me, like, who are the people in my life that I support? And I only talked to people outside of my nuclear family. And she was like, you didn't even mention your children. I was like, yeah, because we just take that part for granted, right? Like, it's the idea that all of these pieces of us take our time, and they're all part of what might be making us tired, right? Like, pandemic stuff, supporting kids through the pandemic was like a thing that took a bunch of energy. So that whole piece of remembering all the parts that are impacting us, not just work, and then like pretending like it's not all part of the equation and acknowledging them as part of it. And then the other piece is that, along with hustle harder, is that, like, it's more impressive if you did it alone and you didn't need help, means that so many people are like reinventing wheels that already exist because they don't want to seem too needy. They don't want to seem too this, right? Like, that's where, taking the shortcuts isn't a bad thing if it just gets you to where you need to be faster. And what are the ways that you can find that? That's when I'm always encouraging people to find the easy, right? Like, you're not cheating. You're finding the more effective, easy, efficient way to get to the next place. It's what people do when they work with me, right? That you can go and find a lot of the information and the strategies I talk about. But if you want like the fast answers to like, how can I, unclutter things? It's why people work with coaches, I think. It's not trying to do everything by yourself.
It's not. And it is examining, I love that question. Am I trying to do everything by myself? Right. And you can do that, in your business, obviously. I mean, just thinking for myself as a business owner, yeah, I am doing everything myself. There's only me. But do I need to? Right. There are fantastic ways to outsource pieces that make sense. Again, it's asking yourself, in that bucket of productivity that I have, what goes in it? And then what is worth outsourcing so that I can keep my bucket in a manageable format so I can enjoy what I'm doing, particularly as an entrepreneur, right? I mean, it is a huge leap to leave the safety structure of a job, particularly in Canada, because we have so many job protected leaves. That also mean we also have benefits, health benefits associated with it, right? Leaving all that, going out on your own, not having a drug plan or any physio or massage therapy, right? It all of a sudden becomes very pressurized. And that's not why most of us get into this. Most of us get into this to serve, to make sure that we are putting something meaningful out into the world that is going to support other people through many different means, all of them really important. But it can't happen if you're burning the candle at both ends, and it can't happen if you're doing it alone. And I think it's checking into that question is, am I doing it alone? If I'm doing it alone, what is holding up my need to do it alone? How am I thinking about this? Is it because I don't think I'm enough? Is it because I have got a scarcity mindset? There's only so many dollars to go around. Is it because I am a hot mess and I'm not organized enough? And a lot of leaders as well as entrepreneurs face this too, right? Where it's just quicker if I do it myself. That's a big one.
Yes.
Um, and really holds up this pillar of hard work and hustle. And it's like, well, but what's the cost? What is the cost of doing it yourself all the time? And I'm not talking dollars. We're also talking about, your productivity, your wellness, your connection, right? If I'm constantly doing all the things myself, I'm certainly not building relationships with new people. And that it has a cost associated with it.
Yeah. So I know that you have a tool that can be useful to people, entrepreneurs, corporate, all the people alike, but a tool that can help them sort of get a sense for where they're at. And so do you want to tell us a little bit about that? Because I know that it's a useful resource, not only in like filling it out, but also getting some of the advice and tips and stuff that you have to say about it in the after of that.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for bringing that up, because I've got a working life wellness assessment tool. This is an assessment tool. I didn't build it. It is based on open source psychological work that was done in the Netherlands and Belgium. And so the tool itself, there's a link. I know you're going to be sharing the link. It takes 5 minutes. 5 minutes will tell you where your wellness is at. And then following that, if you are finding yourself at risk for burnout, you can sign up to be able to understand better what those risks of burnout are. So it's a really great risk assessment tool to see whether you're there or not. And I know many people have taken it and used it so far. And I think for some people, the results are quite surprising, because it doesn't take long for us to be hitting that red line, where what it's trying to highlight is you're pushing yourself beyond the means that you have, whether those are, feeling good about yourself, whether it's a health constraint or whether it's exhaustion. There's always a cost associated with pushing ourselves beyond the limit that we really should be working. And we know what that limit is. We just don't feel like we have a choice, which is why we blow past it. So it's to highlight that. And it gives you an opportunity to step back and to really assess, okay, what's working for me in my working life and what's not. And it can be really hard to see what you can do about the stuff that's not working. And that's where I would love to be a part of that process, to be able to support figuring out how we deal with that list of what's not working.
Yeah, that's awesome. I really appreciate you being here and talking with us about this. Are there any final thoughts, things you want people to know and remember as we wrap up this conversation about a topic? I think we all, it's a topic I think we all need to spend a little bit more time thinking about, right? Am I expecting too much of myself? Am I asking myself to do so much hard work all the time that I don't remember to try to enjoy my work and my life, right? Like that is, it's almost like when we haven't spent time thinking about it, we stop remembering it's a thing we could do. It's just like, we're just trying to get to the other side, right? And I think that it's that whole, and I don't want to start a whole other conversation as we're wrapping up, but that whole, people retire and then they like die, or like they think that all the fun is going to happen once they retire, right? Like once I retire, everything will be good. I just need to get there. As opposed to figuring out like, how can this journey part be something I enjoy? So yeah, are there any thoughts that you have there as we're wrapping this up?
Absolutely. And I believe this quote's from Anne Lamott. What is it you want to do with your one wild and precious life? And that's such an important question to ask yourself as a professional as well as a human. And I think what I can offer is this activity is, if you could wave a magic wand, what would your perfect working day look like? When would it start? When would it stop? How would you feel in that working day? And we've got a lot of opportunity right now with hybrid work and with working from home as entrepreneurs. You can go for a walk at 2:30 in the afternoon if you want to. You do not have to follow the structure of 9 to 5, which we still have very much culturally embedded. So wave a magic wand. What does your perfect working day look like? And how would that perfect working day attend to both the things you want to get done and you? Because if you're not looking after yourself, no one else is going to do it for you.
Yes, what a good point to end on. So we are definitely linking up to that assessment tool, to Carleen's website. Go and check her out. Spend a little bit of time asking yourself how you're feeling and how it's all going. And Carleen, thank you so much for being here.
No, thanks for having me, Laura. I really appreciate it.
All right, so that's the little awkward pause I left at the end for editing, but we're still live on Facebook, and I think there are still a few more people who are watching live, and I can see that we've had some comments in the chat. For those of you who are watching, if you have anything that you want to ask Carleen or I, or if you have any extra thoughts, please share them. Nicole posted, and I'll just read this. So the Hustle author Kate Mangino talks about the gender imbalance when it comes to the burden of responsibility. Even today, it continues to sit squarely on the shoulders of women, even when women are also full-time entrepreneurs. Yeah, and I think it's that responsibility is we don't even remember it's happening sometimes. What do you think about that quote?
Absolutely. I love that. And Nicole, that's so right now, right? A lot of us are feeling that. And it's also, I think, one of the titles they put alongside this is the emotional labor, right? So yes, maybe we have good division of labor at our home. Our spouses have been incredibly helpful, but typically there's an inequity in terms of the emotional labor that's happening, right? Who's the one that looks after the kids when they're crying? Who's the one that takes them to the doctor because the kids are afraid of needles? Who's the one that does the parent teachers? Because they're the ones that are going to be far better at having and navigating those conversations. That tends to fall because there's one person from an emotional landscape perspective who's curating the feels in the house. And they're usually doing that absent of their own needs. So it's really looking after how do we look after all of these things? How do we continue to make sure we're sharing the load so that we can be professionals and not burn out?
Yeah, as Nicole then commented, who keeps track, right? Like it's not even there is that job, and I've heard this about that emotional load, right? Is in the workplace, we have project managers and then people do the tasks. And at home, we think of the division of labor as only the task part, not the project management part, right? Like who's remembering that these things need to happen, who is assigning the roles to people, who is remembering when they didn't happen. It's all part of it. And it's all part of, like we were saying, right? Like we are all human beings who have work and home. And we can't forget that, like I loved when you said 30 hours a week, including like all your work, right? Like it's none of us are doing that.
No, we're blowing it out of the water. And that's part of the hiding of the burnout piece, right? Because this is culturally celebrated. And also too, we don't have options, right? Most of us don't have people coming in to clean our homes or cook our meals or take our kids to things, right? Like it's us who's curating that. And we're happy to do it, right? It's not a burden. It's part of, care and concern and expressing that love for our kids and our families. But it does have costs associated with it, right? And as anyone who's ever had to try and figure out last minute what they're going to try and cobble together for dinner out for leftovers in the fridge, that's where the rubber hits the road. And it's
a cereal night. It's a cereal night.
Breakfast for dinner, kids. Let's have Cheerios.
Yeah.
And you can, what? And it's okay to do that. And we put a lot of guilt on ourselves when we do that. And you know what? No, this was what you had today.
That's right.
And you're human.
Yeah. Robin just said, sometimes I don't even want to check in with myself as I know I won't like what I see when I know I'm burning the candle at both ends, right? Like, and it seems like it's going to be more work to try to change the situation.
Oh, I love that, Robin. And I feel you. I really do. And here's another myth that we have. So this is a rule you have in your head. Then this is one more you can break, is we tend to think if we let ourselves feel the unwelcome feelings, that they will come and live inside of us and never, ever, ever go away. Guilt, shame, frustration, anxiety, whatever that is for you. And the interesting thing is, if you give yourself some space to do that, and you might need the safe space with a practitioner, so that can be a coach, that can also be your therapist or someone else in your care community, you can walk through those, because the only way to move those emotions out is through them. And so one of the exercises I sometimes give my clients who are experiencing unwelcome feelings is, okay, sit down and have coffee with it. Set it across the table from you and say, why are you here? And explore with it. And you'll be really surprised to see that that can move that energy out. And if that's not feeling like it's safe, then it maybe that's what's telling you you need to work with somebody to help you work with those particular pieces so that you have the opportunity to explore them and to move them. They're there to help as much as they're there to harm. That's the thing about emotions. They're a GPS for us, right? And that emotion might be there because you're not working safely, because you've pushed yourself so far. And that's maybe the early warning sign. So have a cup of coffee with it if you can.
Yeah, I think that's a great, and even if you're not ready to do something about it, one of the first steps is noticing it, right? Some
Yeah,
people aren't even noticing it. And so it's okay if you're not ready to start, but it's
yeah,
okay. It's good to start thinking that I want to be ready to start. So when am I going to be ready to start? And when am I going to find the space to do this? Which is different than like pretending it doesn't exist.
exactly. And the thing that they're seeing, and there's not a lot of research on this, and I keep poking and looking for it because it's just beginning, but those autoimmune concerns that we have with our health that people can't quite put their finger on, they're not necessarily genetically linked. It's clearly not linked to trauma. It wasn't, because of a car accident, as an example. That are happening. Why are they happening? Why are people getting so much eczema? Why are people getting alopecia and their hair is falling out? Why are we seeing inflammatory diseases like diabetes, heart disease, arthritis, etc., really rising up? And there is the beginnings of some interest in putting money behind figuring out, is this because of stress? Is this because we take those feelings, they come up, we go, oh, heck no, not today, push them down and say, nope, you're not coming out. And that's a question, right? Because it doesn't go, it stays, right? Our bodies are repositories for every emotion we're feeling, and they stay and they rummage around in there. They're bored. They're moving. So it's really asking ourselves again, yes, I'm not ready, and I appreciate that, but recognizing that there's something there, that's so key. Noticing. I love the way you put that. Noticing.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, thank you so much. And I love this extra little conversation at the end. That was one of the things that I was definitely hoping for as we go live on Facebook and as we share these interviews ahead of when they go up onto, as I keep calling it, all the podcast places. So we are going to be doing these regularly. So thank you, Carleen, for being here. And you were my first one that I have been broadcasting as an interview live on Facebook for this season of the podcast. I really appreciate you being here. I appreciate those of you watching and engaging in the conversation. And for any of you watching on the recording, if you've made it all the way to the end, please keep asking your questions in the chat. We'll come back and see them and check out for when the next ones go live. And again, one more time, Carleen, thank you so much for doing this with me.
Oh, I appreciate you sharing your audience with me for this brief period of time. And it's such an important topic. Thank you, Laura.